Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here on the lead up to round three's Friday night footy, Carlton versus the Bulldogs. Very interesting game last night. We'll talk a bit more about that. Thank you to everybody who is already jumping on. As I said, I always try to get on here on Friday nights if I can. It's nearly not going to tonight because I do have a ridiculously early start tomorrow, but I thought, why not? Let's still do it because who doesn't love talking footy? As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100, or Swiz26. So interesting last night. As I said, one of the worst games of footy I probably have had to sit there and watch on TV. More just from the skill level. It was, really poor. I think if you're a Bombers supporter, you probably don't care so much. But yeah, if you're as a neutral, we probably weren't so happy watching that. But it's one of those things with footy. Like last night, we get a close game, which was close pretty well the whole way through, but the skill level awful. Last week, I went to Essendon and Adelaide, which was so exciting from a neutral point to watch, but it was a 10-goal thrashing. But it was exciting because goals were getting kicked, skill level was up, all that. So, sometimes you think, is the closer game better because you're more interested just because of the result, or do you prefer like sort of skills? But some of the targets that was missing, the video that went out with today about Horn Francis and that drop mark that he had in the forward line after Riola kicked to him. Like how do professional players sort of miss those sort of things, especially when they're kind of the ones that were in space. There were a few times where you're just watching, you're like, nothing worse. You got your player, and it happened. I think Rosie dropped an absolute sitter. A couple other players dropped sitters. And you're just like, how is that even possible? Like, but it happens, and I guess that's footy. So just kind of having a quick look at some of the draft for people in draft leagues, and especially if you're trying to stream forwards. Well, if you've got bye players missing this week, I've just sort of been going through a few to see who's available. Managed to pick up Tex Walker in one. Obviously, Adelaide playing North Melbourne, but the big ones is Jack Higgins was available and a couple for mine. Playing obviously Richmond, small forward should do well. Look at what the small forwards for Port Adelaide did last week. And Ajay Miss a little bit further down, scored about 55 last week, playing against West Coast, should probably get a few extra opportunities. So for those guys who do play draft and like streaming, especially your forwards, more than anyone, I actually saw Zach Jones has appeared as a midfielder in a couple as well. So not anyone's sort of picked him up. So depending on how deep your draft is, and especially if you can kind of loophole, there is a couple interesting ones that I've just kind of been flicking through and going, I might just get a piece of that action for this week in particular. So a little bit of interesting stuff there, but we are here to talk more classic, but obviously there are players who do play everything. So throwing that out, and feel free to shoot any of those questions if you're still debating about what you're doing with your team. It's always interesting. But from last night's game, Merritt started like on a house on fire. I was pretty happy as a non-owner that he only finished with the 106, even from the 34 touches. Probably could have gone huge if he kicked those 2 goals, especially the goals were worth absolute gold last night, because in a game where there was only 17 kicked, like you have a look at Horn Francis here, probably the best example of that, where I think, what was he going into like the final quarter, like 40, a little bit less than 40, because he had obviously the 25 at quarter time, and then I think he only scored maybe it was 10, 11 points for the next 2 quarters. And then he kicks that big goal, and he has he may have actually been 37 at 3/4 time, because I think somebody said he went 45 in the last quarter. So he kicks that goal, a couple other big key positions, and it's going through the roof. So Merritt could have easily gone, a 120, 130 plus, which would have been annoying for a few people who messaged me, had him vice captain. There's a big one there. The good ones for the Bombers. We're talking about like why I've restructured my side to bring in those extra defenders. And if I scroll up to the defense, how good was Zachy Reid last night? Now, most people own him. I've obviously loopholing him so I could set up my captaincy if I need that. But the 88, looked really composed and gives us a little bit of confidence going forward that hopefully he can grow from there. And he definitely, will make cash for a lot of us. Those people who had his partner in crime back there, prior, very good score, 78, just obviously came off late with a little bit of an injury concern, so a little bit of a watch there. The Bombers do in the next couple of weeks. So they have, the good thing is they have the bye. But then after the bye, they have a really interesting situation where they play Melbourne in Adelaide on the Saturday. and then they fly over to West Coast off a 6-day break and play them over there in Perth. So you would expect the Bombers, after they've had their bye, probably take their full squad and don't come back to Melbourne. In that, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see sort of what they do around there, especially like your extended guys like Sard, who obviously played on the off the sub last night, looked really good. So maybe some of those guys who are just on the fringe probably go over and they probably make some changes leading into the West Coast game. So just something interesting to watch there from the Bombers' point of view. Outside of that, the Caldwell had a down game from his standards. The AFL fantasy side of things was great, but just from a Supercoach point of view, not so good. Kako getting a 62 from just 10 touches and didn't even kick a goal was really good for owners then. So, there's some good signs there. And then on the other side, unfortunately, Rosie, especially those who had VC, I think it was 2.1% that of the top, maybe of the comp, and maybe 1.5%, which equated to about 27 people, had him straight captain, who obviously reversed trades and forgot that they had him on captain. So that's brutal for them, especially those 27 people who obviously sitting in the what it works out to be, I think the top 1,700 at the moment. So they're obviously going to have their ranking massively drop this week. Rosie's game was really poor. Luckily enough, we got to 64 out of him because it was looking bad. Powell Pepper was very disappointing. The 48 at halftime, he was flying, and to have the 68 DT and just the 48 Supercoach in the end, very frustrating because, he was actually way ahead of Horn Francis, way ahead of Rosie, and he was looking like making some cash. And then at least it wasn't a concussion, but went off with it looked like a sort of a back kind of upper shoulder injury, and he was really struggling after that. Also, there was a point where I think Mackay got switched over to him just because he was struggling so much. So, you had that. Sin looked really good for owners, another 80. It does help when the Bombers were kicking in the ball, kicking behinds all night. So, he seems to be quite constant. Farrell with an 86, but the big one is I think it's Moraes that we say, Christian Moraes, the young Port Adelaide midfielder, 27 touches, 113k. So he's pretty well a lock to come in our sides. This is one great thing for me, not doing the Henderson thing, as much as probably now that Camporelli, Hasty's out, but probably will be for me maybe Hasty next week, straight into Moraes, which works perfectly. Berry started on fire, had the 15 touches, but just the 34 Supercoach. So he looked like he was going to absolutely rip the game apart and, massively slowed down. So annoying for owners there. All right, let's get into some Q&A. Thank you, as I said, people on the chat. Oh, yeah, and then quickly about my team. So Horn Francis, let's just talk about him for a second. He's efficiency of his disposal is beautiful. Like, he contested possessions, everything he touched pretty well led into a score for Port Adelaide. So that's why he was sort of getting the inflated score. That big goal in the last quarter to put them 2 goals up. And I was thinking, here we go, Port are going to run away with it here. So a massive tick on that. But geez, he looked puffed. Like, all the footage, like he stands out so much. Like, him and Bergman look very similar, but the blonde hair, but he has obviously the big black socks pulled up, so you can spot Horn Francis from nearly anywhere. And so I'm watching him around, and he's with his player at the contest, and then the ball goes flying around the ground, and he's nowhere to be seen, and there he is puffing in the background, and so he looks like really struggling for fitness. I was kind of shocked because I thought the way Port set up, he was going to play way more forward time. That didn't happen. He played a lot more midfield time than I was expecting. But geez, he struggled playing as that number one midfielder in there at times, especially when Rosie was off the ground. So, when he got the ball, looked awesome. So I'm disappointed because at 3/4 time, it looked like he was putting up a 50 or a 60. And I'm like, what a great trade out. This is great. So owners will be fairly happy that he got to 82, but at the same time, you'll be disappointed because he obviously missed that goal earlier. I think there was another one which didn't even make the distance. He had the potential last night to go 120 plus. So you'd be frustrated as an owner. So I feel like we're all in kind of the middle. Like, yes, it's an 82. I think I worked out he's going to drop about 34k this week. So it's just like it's a disappointing score, but it could have been worse, and it's a disappointing score, but it's a good score from my point of view. It's really hard to kind of get a read on. So Saints next week, he could come out and do really well, but then look what happened against Richmond when they had the home game and everyone else dominated and he didn't. So it's a real hard read on what he's going to do on any given week. And I think some others will pull the trigger next week. Others will obviously hold fire. And yeah, like he could easily, again, like if he plays like last night, it might be another 80. It could be a 50, 60, or, if he kicks those goals, it could be 120. But that's probably enough about Horn Francis. Here we go. The Greek Raven. Hi, been in the Philippines. How are the Philippines going out there, mate? Hopefully you've had some good weather. And coming back on the 14th, thanks for your effort. No problems, mate. Find me on X, mate. Let me know where's good to go in the Philippines and that. I'm hopefully that's like a recreational holiday and not just work. Hey, Global, thanks for jumping on as always. I might even go. Let's blow this up a little bit so we can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay, Sean. Hey, Swiz, doing a great job. Appreciate that, mate. Appreciate your efforts. Who would you pick out of Bailey D, Sinclair, or Zorko? Well, I've got two of them. So I brought in Sinclair this week, so I'm really big on the draw. But I already had Zorko. I know Chris is big on bringing on Zorko this week because he didn't have him. So I think it's one of those. But I really like Sinclair's draw coming up. The Marvel games, obviously kicking off of Richmond this week. So that's the way I'm going. But I think either one of them, they're all going to be good picks. It's just the problem with Bailey Dell, you've missed a couple of the really good scores, and that's sort of why I end up going away from him as well. So yeah, that does kind of hurt from that perspective. Where, yeah, if you kind of got him from the start, well done. So I'm thinking of going sort of Sinclair now because I think that draw really does open up for him coming up. My man, Joe, and shout out also to his co-host, Big J, messaging that and before the show. So thanks, mate, for supporting the pod as always, mate. I don't think you're winning the flag this year. That's I'm pretty sure we sat together and watched them play against Adelaide. They were friggin' awful. But the kids were good. And you actually looked better once Sada Harley came on. It's like gave you a bit of a spark. So there's that's the thing for me as like a Richmond supporter. Do I want to see what we saw last year, win 2 games with like senior players? It's like, man, you're actually more excited. You don't even care if you're sort of losing, but if we win the same amount of games or even 3 games with like kids, you're actually more up and about. It does make it more exciting to actually go and you see that. And sometimes, though that situation, with the young fellas getting that opportunity. And then those sort of other guys who are sort of 21, 22 who now get an increased opportunity, it actually can do wonders. There were definitely some good signs there. Michael, as always, do appreciate you jumping on. Traded Foster Lindsay. Yep, easy. Holding Hasty makes sense. With the Sandringham players playing at midday and St Kilda at 4 p.m, could see if Hasty plays well enough, of course. And then, you can always bring Foss back to make trades. And if you've got the cash to do that, that is a great strategy. I love it. That's really taking it next level to go, obviously, see what's happening from a VFL point of view. But, I really like what you're doing there. That sounds very sensible, mate. All right, Rosie, and this is Joe again. If you haven't checked him out also on all the things he's doing at the moment, was it the #1 podcast? Oh, mate, I should know this by now. Obviously, Centre Bounce, Fancast, you do it all, mate. Rosie, Jason Horn Francis were asked. Just our luck that SPP had to get hit hard. Yeah, he was heading off to about an 80, and it was getting to that point where, as you're saying, it's 1 up, 1 down to Baz. It's just so unfortunate. But that's the way footy goes sometimes. It's really frustrating with things like that. The Greek Raven, for me, trading out Sardis, that's an obvious one. Lawler and who's that? Oh, that's Flynn. Yep. Come in Bailey D, Levi, and Lindsay, 75K in the bank, mate. I think you're pretty set up with that. That's seems like a very good winner. You've repeated that one again. Hey, Kev, thanks, mate. Always jumping on. I do like that. Go early with Perryman to Bice or Campo Hastings to Henderson. At least the thing there with Campo Hasty to Henderson, you're getting that initial cash rise this week. So you can do that and then do the Bice move next week. And I think that gives you the double. I'm not doing Henderson because obviously wanted to get Sinclair and I had to fix another rookie side swap. If I hadn't started Foss and I had started Nod like I was always going to do and somehow talked myself out of that, which is really annoying, I would have probably gone and done that Henderson move, but pushed him to side because that's unfortunately I wanted to make that other trade. But no, I think that's fine. I would lean more towards Hasty because obviously he's only played the 1 game. Campo's only 1 game away, and there hasn't been a late change tonight, but yeah, he's obviously close to come back in anyway. So I don't think it'll be hard for him to get back in. Michael, thank you for bringing this up. I was just talking to the boys about this. Clay Hall getting dropped. Ben's like, you told me he was going to play this week. I was like, yeah, I went straight on the West Coast for him, and they were just all like, what the hell is going on? He looked really good. He probably played his best game last week. A bit harsh dropping the young fella after that. So, yeah, I know they obviously has some guys coming in, but after such a good performance, like, yeah, okay, he was only 15 touches, but he did kick an important goal. And, yeah, I thought he was, there was way worse players out there than what obviously he was. So yeah, a bit of a surprise, but who knows what goes through some coaches' heads. And I'll give a little story about that. He used the first emergency, Allen's the second, and Flynn again is on the emergency list with Williams keeping his spot, even though Williams was the one subbed off last week. So go figure sometimes with this setup. Hewitt is in that last position, a little bit of a worry. Really hope he's not the one that's put on the sub. But hope it's sort of long, but yeah, Duar played so well last week. You don't think it's going to be him. Marriage, I think was he round one, the sub. So, do they go back to that well and make him the sub again? Yeah, he was. So there's potential for that to happen, but yeah, I was a little bit sort of disappointed with that. Thanks for jumping on. Is that Yaron? Yes, thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Giddy Goo, yeah, or what are you saying? Could go Foster. Oh, yes, you need to get Nod. Straight out, you need to get Nod. Lawler to Henderson and Perryman to Baileydale. Miss out on Lindsay. No, I think you need Lindsay as well. Yeah, so, yeah, I would think try and fix your rookies this week. So the two rookies, you definitely need a Nod and Lindsay. That's just, and don't even worry about Henderson. So I'd go Foster, Nod, Lawler to Lindsay. And yeah, and even if you have to skip Henderson, yeah, definitely that. Good question coming up from Yaron. Hi, curious to see you benching Nevitt. I've got him slightly ahead of Levi. Love to know your thoughts. It was probably much of a muchness, and probably in a way, I kind of wanted the situation where, maybe I put both of them on. I was just actually, that's because I've chucked Short into my flex for now, because I think it sort of gives me a little bit more movement over the next week or two. I think Revel is probably the most likely to be sub. So I think Levi starts. Nevitt, the worry is, they're both coming off the bench. Like that's, I think, and this is where Tristan's point comes out. Will Baz be a laid out? If Baz is a laid out, I'm more likely to swap them around. So why Bailey Smith is in and Geelong have more that full strength lineup, I think Nevitt's the one I'd rather have off the bench and have him as the emergency. If Baz comes out as that extra midfield spot, that Nevitt gets the opportunity. So that was part of the thinking as well. I think Levi's just such a good player. It doesn't matter where he plays and comes on. So, yeah, so Levi over Nevitt if Bailey Smith is playing. So that's where I'm heading there. So I hope that answers that. And that's where my thinking, I should put my team back up. So you guys who haven't seen it, that's what I'm playing with at the moment. So yeah, a few trades there, fixing up Nod, bringing him in, which I should have just started anyway. That's stupid of me. Lindsay, and then yeah, the big one was Sinclair coming in my back line. And then if I scroll down, you'll see Shorty is part of that 5-man defense, but he's just sitting in the flex because most likely one of these rookies like a Trainer or O'Connell will probably end up getting side swapped for maybe a Moraes. That's the way I'll probably look at doing that. And then Short just goes back there with the thought of upgrading Short at some point. However, if some reason somebody else pops off that I really need, let's just say some premium midfielder or whatever comes out and goes like 160, 170 and their break even's just like ridiculous and you've got to jump on, at least Short's there that I can make that move. So I was talking to Chris about it and he was like, no, that's a really good plan because it gives me the flexibility to turn Short into anybody if I need to. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting there. And as I said, Moraes will come in next week, but most likely with that sort of situation. Yeah, and there's a story for us. So I was talking to somebody today who's actually a relative of a former North Melbourne player. I won't name the people and stuff like that. But yeah, they were talking to me and I actually owned this person in Supercoach at some point over the last few years, but they've obviously now been let go. And yeah, well, I was chatting to him about it and they're like, it's funny because this player was saying what he felt like his best game and what we would have felt like his best game wasn't actually seen that good of a game by the coaches. And I think he was actually dropped the week after because though he may have got on the scoreboard and set up a goal, whatever, he wasn't sort of running to the right places that the coach wanted them to, and maybe doing the filling the defensive holes that they needed to in their system. So he was actually left out the following week, and the frustrations with that. So that might have been the situation, say, with a Clay Hall issue here, where we look at him and go, he did everything right from our point of view, but the coaches have a different opinion. So it was kind of an interesting chat talking to this person today about that, because the person's a local footy coach, and they were like, sort of, here's a bit of an insight when we're just sort of chatting footy. So kind of an interesting one. On that, Tristan, I really hope Bailey Smiths are laid out too. It's interesting they're flying both Bailey Smith and Stewart there, so obviously giving everyone both a chance. They want to obviously win this game. Important one. Like, you never want to kind of throw games and stuff, but and they obviously want to get the winner over Brisbane. But sometimes, is the long-term plan better? Is it just trying to back the boys? Maybe up against Brisbane, the conditions are going to be pretty poor. Maybe they could take the young fellas, put their bodies on the line and try to freshen up some of these guys for the Melbourne game on the Friday night. Because potentially now you're going up to Brisbane, you might win that, but they could still get beaten. Obviously, Lions being the premiers last year, and then you might have some fatigued guys flying back after these conditions, playing against the Ds, who they probably should beat. But does that then bring Melbourne into that game on Friday night? So, kind of sort of interesting. And then I think they've got another 6-day break after that, where they go to Adelaide. So Geelong do have a really big workload before their Easter Monday clash. So it's interesting that they are choosing to go down that path. I thought they probably would have gone the other direction, but that's just me and my opinions on how some teams should organise themselves. Corey, how are you, mate? Thoughts on Bailey-Dale to Perryman and Sardis to Henderson? Yeah, I think you're all over that, mate. As I said, if you can get up to the super premiums, I think Bailey-Dale's close. He's in that sort of Jordan Clark bracket where I think they're very good. They're knocking on the door of that sort of top 4. I think they're right on that stage that they probably should be top 6, if not at least top 8. I think they're definitely in that top 10. But I just think obviously the standout, Sheasel, even with the sort of role he's playing a little bit more forward, he just finds so much ball. Zorko, Whitfield, Sinclair just seem to be the prime top 4, and then you've got the other guys sort of pushing around that, and a couple other guys will, at times will push towards them. So I think Bailey-Dale is still a great choice, and obviously he's going to go up in value, so no problems there at all. But my recommendation, if you've got the extra cash, get up. I really like Jordan Clark's draw as well, but Bailey-Dale, is a fine choice. Just the problem is, again, would not be surprised if he gets attention just because Voss did it to Jaden Short, of all people. Like, that was a really weird game to do it in, and you kind of have a look at that. Does say like a Cottrell type, might head down there and play a little bit of defensive role on him. That's kind of wouldn't surprise me at all. H-Man, thanks for all the hard work. No problems, mate. Love doing it. Yeah, is it too early to upgrade Data Anderson? No, 100%. I really love that move. With a couple of rookie corrections, leaves you 238K in the bank to help upgrade Baz next week, mate. You're all over that. Yeah, I love Noah Anderson pick. The draw's great. I've said about all these draws, you want Richmond in one of your draws coming up. So I think that's the round 6 match. Round 6 at Marvel as well. We're playing. There'll be nobody there for that. We hate going to Marvel. So Richmond Gold Coast in round 6, and even before that, he's got the D's this week, but even though it's against Adelaide at home the following week, his home form's so good. And then over in I think that's the Barossa game. They're playing North Melbourne. So they've got such a really good start to the season, the Suns. It's all set up for them. They've freshened up after one game. So they travel to Perth, which is usually probably taxing, obviously, for the Queensland teams. They get to freshen up with the week off, come out, now play the Ds. And then, obviously they have a bit of travel early on, but, he's the captain. He's leading from the front. So really like that pick, mate. Yaron, I've got Lindsay with the E with Hasty. Then I'll go Nevitt. Don't trust the Supercoach gods. Yeah, and I get that. Yeah, 100%. There's I was actually thinking about that too, because that might actually be the game. I'm in my draft team here, but let's have a look here. What have I got? I do like that. That's why I didn't, because Lindsay is playing before Hasty. It's just so frustrating with these loopholes this week. So, and I did watch Lindsay live last week, and I was just like, he looks so good. watch Nevitt punish me here, but yeah, I think I'm still sticking with that. If Bailey Smith's in, it does limit Nevitt's role somewhat, because I feel like he's going to play he'll rotate through that wing and midfield, and it just loses the potential to get like sort of more bulk CBAs. Corey, yeah, it's going to be interesting in our matchup. Oh, yes, the Skodfather Cup. Yeah, good luck, Corey. Yes, I did see you and I were matched up in that. So, yeah, no, good luck. Nick, would you go Zorko and Henderson, Ordell and Lindsay? Yes, you need Lindsay. I think he's the better rookie. He just looks so composed. So it's the decision making when he had ball and some of the options that he chose. He looked really good at the level. Been talking him up all preseason. So even though I do like Zorko obviously more than Bailey Dell, I just think Lindsay's just one of those must-have rookies. So Nick, that's an easy choice there. Joe Man, how Chris Scott how Chris Scott would it be that both Baz and Stu are laid out? Oh, that's the most Geelong thing ever. Don't assume it's always one out. And like somebody, that's the one I should ask. Who's the stats man on X? And I love when I do this and I just absolutely blank. But the question on how many what sort of Geelong's percentage compared to everybody else with laid outs, because I think that'd be worlds apart to compare to every other team. They should just name their 40 and then just throw the 22 together when like an hour before the game. Even then, I think there was one game where they did it like 5 minutes before the game and paid the fine or something. Corey, I can't get Clark or any higher. Yep, no, that makes sense. Then get Bailey Dale. That's fine. If you can't get higher, he's still going to be around that mark, as I said. So I don't think it's a bad situation there at all. Joe, if you guys can keep Sardis, reckon he's worth holding onto. Brad was asking the post game if Shield stays on the ball, and he immediately said that he wants Sardis to keep playing. Yeah, that's good insight, mate. My only worry with that was, what happens if sort of Parrish is fit and Sardis's game time. We know how low it gets. So there is some concerns. Like I don't think he can get any lower unless he puts him in sub, but it is a great point because Shield obviously played in that role last night. And in a perfect world, I'd probably I'm sort of playing around with my cash and going, what can I kind of do there? Is there somebody else I can move out? But it would mean I'd probably have to then go Sinclair down to Bailey Dale. It's not the worst thing in the world. And then sort of flick Hasty off to get and then keep Sardis there or even a Foss there. So I have played around with that idea, but I think I'm just a little bit more in love with the Sinclair pick than I am Bailey Dell, as much as I do love Bailey D. Watch that probably come out and burn me and probably would be the good move. And then Sardis could be used as a loophole in your midfield next week. So that does open up that option as well. It was just sort of disappointing that the injury happened. I would have loved to just hold him on for this week, but with so many other rookies and sort of things that we will need to do for our side, I can understand why he is an obvious trade. But I think there'll be some people who keep him, keep Foz, and they'll probably get the rewards from that for sure. Michael, thought throughout the round, if we find we want to make 3 trades next round, what's your thoughts on using a boost on Patton to Bias before last game of this round to assist? 100% no problems. I did. Somebody asked me this last night about boosts, and I feel like there's in this sort of period of the first 4 or 5 rounds where we're doing the tradings, you probably can use sort of 2 boosts. There's nothing wrong. The thing is, we've got 40 trades, and I was talking about this last night. A lot of us still, I feel like in our heads, so we've got 20 trades still or 30 trades. And Supercoach generally has played very different to AFL Fantasy. So us Supercoaches, it was always sort of you save your trades, you don't want to spend them as much because that's how the game was played. It's just that's more the traditional. And then we went up to 25 and then we had 30 for ages. But now that we've got 40, we're still probably going to trap. We're probably spending a little bit too much, but at the same time, it has changed our way now thinking, and the fact that the top players, it's proven. Jovan's shown it, Scott's shown it, JP, all these guys is like very aggressive of the way they play. So if you're not being aggressive with them, you can find yourself dropping down the rankings by no real fault, even if you've got a good side, because they're just so brutal with their team and their movements to keep ahead. And if you do save your trades and you're more conservative, you're then hoping on key injuries. So you really need a player that's highly owned or a couple players highly owned later in the season where you can sort of make up that ground late. But then by then, a lot of these aggressive people, because they've been aggressive, got the right rookies in, made a lot of cash, and now we'll have the flex. A lot of the times we have like the 23rd player covering some of these guys for a week. So some of those trades don't make as much sense of holding. So, even if you use the two boosts this week, you use the trade, you're still going to have, 33 trades left. There'll be a couple of weeks in there where we're probably not going to be trading as much. And then when we get to that upgrade season, round 7, the dual positions, and then round 6, round 7, round 8, you might use another one. Maybe it's one, even if maybe it could be 2 there. And then you probably don't usually trade the week or 2 before the buys. And then obviously then we hit the buy rounds and we get the 3 trades through there, which the buy rounds this year, we've got the 5 rounds. So that's probably 12. We could use up to 12 trades in there because you usually don't bring it in for the first week. So the 40 trades does make things a lot different on how we usually schedule stuff like this. Hold your ghost. Cool name. Whitfield, Sinclair, and Clark better options than Dell. Yes. Only because Bailey Day has had a couple of those massive scores already. Like it would defy logic for him to just continue to go 130, 130, 130, 130. Like that's Gary Ablett Jr. sort of numbers. And as good as he looks, players just don't do that. And I'm aware, obviously, Sinclair did have the big 145 game, but Sinclair's games usually link in with his Marvel games, and he does have Richmond, who are going to give up more points than anybody this week. So you've got to kind of take into account that. Like you look at Bailey Dale's draw compared to sort of like your Sinclairs and a couple of the other ones. And I did go through this in a little bit of depth last night, but you just kind of have a look at that Bulldogs draw coming up in the short term. And Carlton could be all right, like it is at Marvel, but I do expect him to get some attention at some point. Surely they put some plan in. Voss needs to be sacked if they put no pressure on him because he'll just run around and do whatever he wants. The big one in 2 weeks is Brisbane down at Norwood. Norwood's, off the top of my head, I think it's quite a skinny ground. I think it's very Geelong-like, which does make it harder for the halfback flankers to move. And obviously playing against the Lions, who are such a good team, he does then get the bonus of St Kilda at Marvel, which is obviously the game where he played really well last time. But then it's the one after that, which is the Giants at Monaco, and that's going to be a naturally a tough game, potentially, depending on what Bedford does, and then maybe a couple of their forward guys. The Giants will definitely put some attention in. So it could be a case where it goes, maybe it's 90 or 80 against Brisbane, has the real spike game against St Kilda, and then goes down again. But I think we'll get a little bit more inconsistent scoring where, like Sinclair, for example, there'll be a couple of games there where, I'm sure it'll probably sort of even out a little bit. Yes, again, he does have the Giants, but I think the Giants game, like there's other guys that they probably will sit on. But those Marvel games where he does his best work, and then he has 3, like after the double Adelaide, he has 3 games back to back, 3 games in a row, back to back at Marvel. And then even around the bye times again, he's got I think 4 out of 5 games at Marvel. So actually becomes a really good VC option during those buy rounds. And he's got one of the best buys where Bailey Dell, his buy, as we've always talked about, that first buy, a lot of you guys have Cherry. We have TDKs. Might have Chera, Jason Horne-Francis, Rosie. You might want to try to get in Butters, Bont, Sheasel. It's just another issue. So I was actually trying to look away and go, I just don't want another round 12 guy. I took Horne-Francis. That was another reason. Like I'll probably get Horne-Francis in before there. But if he keeps only going 80s, maybe I can hold off, and I'm trying to avoid the fact of not going the there's many round 12 guys just to try to get the leg up there. I agree, Ghost. I've brought in Clark, and we feel, I really like Clark. I like that move, Joe. I nearly thought about going there about Clark. It's, again, he has such a tasty fixture as well. You expect Sarong or Brayshaw that wants to get the tag. West Coast, Bulldogs at home, Richmond, the D's, Adelaide at home, St Kilda at Marvel. It's really good for Clark. And I was so close to going that, but as I said, I have Sinclair rated ahead of him. The 5 boosts, good, mate, if you got the boost. But don't get in the situation where DR had last year where he had boosts left over because obviously he used trades and didn't have enough trades to go with that boost. So, it's good, great minds. That's what we're about. Love it, boys. We've got about 4 minutes for the footy, so we'll take a few last ones here as I flick through this. Tristan, trade out Fino Sutherland or Camperoli for Henderson. Much better. Obviously, the thing is, at least Finn's going to make 10K this week, could get defensive status, but yeah, Campo's got a lot better break even. So I think, and the fact that Foster Henderson gets you 100K freed up for next week as well, is probably the move there. You two guys are still talking in there. Awesome. Marshall, should I bring in Marshall and Zorko or Cherry and Bailey Dale? I think you need Cherry. Yeah, that's as much as I like Zorko, and I'll probably have him slightly ahead of Bailey Dale. I just think Cherry's going to be a no-brainer. I nearly thought about doing Gorn to Cherry, but I'm monitoring this Harry Mackay, TDK, Pitternet situation, because I think it'll just be at some point I'm going to go TDK to Cherry, or maybe it's just Cherry comes in with that whole short setup there. And I'm thinking of like, well, as much as Gorn, had a shocker last week, got some stuff going on, just his natural pride, his leadership, tapping down to still what's a pretty good midfield in Melbourne. They'll rebound. So I kind of want to keep going. I'm just looking at ways of bringing Cherry back in. But as much as Marshall probably goes well this week, even though he's up against Nank, who's usually a pretty good ruck, I think Cherry's just a no-brainer for that one. Who would you field out of O'Connell and Trainer? Let's – God. There's a chance O'Connell's the sub, so let's go Trainer. But I think what I saw out of O'Connell, surely they just back him in after that late mark. Marvel, does he spend? Oh, but then Richmond are just going to butcher the ball. Joe, you know what? Let's go O'Connell. Bugger it. If O'Connell's not the sub, go O'Connell. If O'Connell's the sub, obviously Trainer. Let's do that. Whichever team is going to win. Yes, like it. Hi, mate. Levi Ashcroft. I'm sure there's another question there, Tony. But yes, Levi Ashcroft. Go get him. Any chance he's sub this week? No, I think it'll be Revel. I'd be shocked to see. He just looks so good. As a Dell starter, I thought he was headed for one of the low-scoring games when he was off the ground and Bramble took the first 5 kick-ins. Yeah, last week it was interesting because at half-time I was like, oh, this is good. And then, obviously had that massive second half. I have Nass over Bailey Dell. So, I think Nass goes pretty well this week, so that's good. Hezwa, Short and Horn Francis out, Sinclair and Whitfield in. Love that, mate. Love it. You're getting 2 of the best defenders in your team. Answer that. And let's go last question, Corey. No, that's just talking about boosts. Been using your boost for that. Oh, Penny, late minute, mate. People asking about Levi Ashcroft. People asking about all your lines, Zorko. You probably should have been in here early answering that, mate. But no, I do appreciate that. Footy-ton tonight should be an interesting game. As always, hit us up on X if you've got any last-minute questions. We'll be on through the week. I will probably try next week even get you guys to have your teams, and I'll just I can get your teams up and we can start talking about that one actually live on the pod. But outside of that, it should be a good one. We'll go one last question. Benny Boy, Sardis, Foss, and Perryman out for Lindsay, Whitfield, and Bice. Love it, mate. I think that's pretty solid. Guys, enjoy. Thank you for everybody that jumped on, and we will talk soon. Bye.